So welcome everybody to a new week, and welcome to the second hour of Mindshifters Radio. Today is Monday, June the 6th, 2022, and our call-in number is 563-999-3581, and press 1, and that puts you into queue to talk to us. And we'd love to hear your comments and your questions because that makes this your show. And while we're waiting on Michael to get dialed in, I'll just remind everybody of two things. One, this coming Saturday, starting at 11 o'clock Eastern Time, is our monthly Mind Shifters Still Point Breathing Workshop. And so all of you who are participating in that should be doing a Mind Shifter prior to Saturday. And then a second thing that is happening the exact same day, starting at 2 o'clock and going till 5, Michael is doing a Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop, a 3-hour workshop. And it's free. It's by Zoom. And I'll have in the notes for today. We'll also have it up on the website before the end of the day. And I'll be sending out a newsletter giving everybody all the information for both of those events that's coming up on Saturday. So we're getting tools out there. We're having to do it a little differently. We're, by Zoom. And but it's all working out really well. So we hope that you can participate with that. The group that he is doing the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop for it's a Facebook marriage support group. And so Michael comments on it ever so often and offers information. So now he's going to be able to do a 3-hour workshop with them. So we invite you all to participate in that. It's free. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart, and welcome, everybody. Honored and delighted that you're here. And then we get to participate in this conversation once again about this awesome tool called First Century Aramaic Forgiveness. Delighted that you're here and delighted that you're part of the show. As Jeannie said, Saturday afternoon, make space on your calendar from 2 to 5 o'clock. We're going to do Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And it'll be live on Zoom. We'll be sending out, for those who are on our mailing list, we'll be sending out an email with a link directly to the process or the workshop on Saturday. So you can just key right in on Zoom, and we'll be there to bring forward the whole process once again in a live format. It'll be 3 hours, 2 to 5. It'll be a free open workshop. Of course, as always, when we do a free workshop, we invite people who are in a position to support, if they choose to donate. But it's wide open, free, and please invite anybody on the globe that you would like to invite to be part of the process. And this process of first century Aramaic forgiveness is just so profoundly powerful. And it really, looking at how easily people could be manipulated, it's a way to take our lives back. You'll notice how many people talk about how somebody did this to them and somebody did that, and they made them angry and they made them sad and they made them afraid and they hurt them, and on and on and on goes the list of blame. And notice how easy it is for someone who lives in that world of denial, lives in that world of blame, for somebody else to take over their lives. I mean, all somebody has to do is violate a goal they hold, and somebody's off like a rocket in their pain, their trauma, their drama, because they've never faced and resolved the pain and the drama within themselves. So anyone can trigger unresolved pain into activity. All they have to do, and you'll notice that, unless you're or someone's just a generally miserable person, they're pretty happy with everybody in their world as long as that everybody, so to speak, is doing what it is they want them to do, is fulfilling the goals they hold for them. And as long as one fulfills the goal, mind serves up approval. And generally speaking, the world calls their approval of another love. It's not love at all. It's simply approval. And notice how quickly that approval can turn to disapproval. All somebody has to do is refuse to fulfill a goal you hold for them. And if you really look closely at that first century Aramaic technology, the brilliance of it is just amazing. I mean, it's the resolution of so much in our world. And so many people who are looking at how everybody else is the problem for what's moving inside of them, never once owning or looking at the fact that what's moving inside of them is moving inside of them. And so our invitation here is to, if you live in a world where you play the game of sadness and fear and anger and rage at others, and you're ready to attack and jump all over someone else simply because they don't fulfill a goal that you hold for them, notice that the reason anyone is ever in pain in any given situation, I mean, short of someone punching you in the nose, cancel the thought, is it just pain inside of them that's been unresolved? And when we load goals in our mind that relate to pain, i.e., gee, you're wonderful, I cherish you, you're awesome, but if you don't do this when I want you to do it, I'm ready to puke all over you. Well, when I begin to realize that what I'm doing, that act of disapproval and that act of projecting rage or sadness or whatever it is that one is feeling, that there's a key way into resolving that within oneself. And the key way is to look at the goal that's driving the whole process of pain perception. And the genius of this first century Aramaic teacher from 2,000 years ago, showing us that forgiveness doesn't look like letting somebody else off the hook because I'm in pain. Forgiveness looks like if I'm in pain, I do an assessment. I look at what it is that's driving the pain that's inside of me, and it always relates to something that I want from myself or someone else. And that when I cancel that goal in the Aramaic language, the first century Aramaic word forgive is actually shebag, and it means to cancel. When I cancel that goal, what happens is the pain that's resonated into activity by holding that goal and having that goal violated, all of a sudden that construct in the mind, that construct of pain, collapses. And when it collapses in on and exposes the root of the pain that's happening inside of me. And I get a chance to process through, to breathe through, to bring love to the presence of my mind's pain. And as I do that, my pain begins its dissolution process. I may enter into that particular forgiveness exercise many, many times to process through all aspects of pain that I hold in any given situation. But the power of resolution that comes from understanding first century Aramaic forgiveness is just monumental. And if you are interested in learning exactly how that process works, then mark your calendar for 2 o'clock on Saturday, the 11th. And I'm sure, Jeannie, do you have the link yet for the Saturday workshop?
Only I just picked up the flyer out of your room and brought it in here so I could read it off to them. But I mean, I didn't read off the Zoom link because it's too long.
No, of course not. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll copy it and paste it to you.
Okay.
And send it.
I needed an email to be able to put it on the computer.
Right. I'll do that while we're talking.
Okay.
So the Zoom link will be there in the notes today. Before the show is complete, I'll send it to Jeannie. And if you're on our email list, if you're not on our email list and you'd like to be, go to our website, whyagain.org. And Jeannie, where will, with the new state of the website, where will people find the sign up button?
For this Saturday workshop?
List. No, for the mailing list.
For the mailing
if somebody
list.
Just wants to be on our mailing list, then that will give them the newsletter for the Saturday workshop.
They just go to whyagain.org and scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, and there is a link that says join their mailing list, and it has a glowing heart like on the app. It's down at the very bottom of the page.
Cool. So if you want to get that sent to you directly, and you're not on our mailing list, then jump on the website and do that. And if you want to engage in doing the forgiveness process, you can do it right there live on the website. You can download the worksheet to your own computer and print it off of your computer on your own printer so that you can do the worksheet long-handed. Or you can go to your app store on your phone and type in the words Heartland, Heartland as one word, Aramaic, Aramaic, forgiveness. And when you type that in, you'll be looking at the world's only forgiveness app, and download it free. It's specifically designed to be as private as an app can possibly be made private. There's only one permission required, and that's for the app to be able to use the internet. The app doesn't ask if it can dial your phone or take pictures or send texts or change settings or any other junk that a lot of apps do. One simple permission. And so you can be assured that it's private. And if you do a worksheet, at the end of doing a worksheet, you can print it as a PDF and save it to your phone. And if you do that, of course, it's going to ask for permission to save the result of that printing to your phone. So, but otherwise, no permissions, totally, completely private. So you can put anything you want in that worksheet, any issue, and you know that you're the only one whose eyes are ever going to see it. And so make use of it, put it to work, and we appreciate you passing on the information that it's there and that it can be used, and that it's, Jean's actually doing another rendition, adding some new features again. So it's going to come to still another level of functionality. We just spent the last few days celebrating Jeannie's Eternal Day, and we actually haven't been doing much in the way of movies or anything like that since COVID started, and you probably know that that's our way of playing. So we did several movies this past week, and I was all in the celebration effort for Jeannie's Eternal Day. So once again, Jeannie, happy Eternal Day. A few days late, but June 2nd was the official day, and we started, I think on June the 1st, and I guess we kind of completed the celebration yesterday. So it was a bit of an extended celebration. But one of the things that happened as a result of doing that celebration process is we decided that Michael J., my son, is really into Doctor Strange and the Marvel comic characters and all. And so there's a new Doctor Strange movie out, which was pretty cool. It was fun. And it was suggested that we watch a couple of other movies beforehand that would sort of get us up to speed on what was happening in this new movie. And we got to see one that came out last week called Spider-Man No Way Home. And I was so pleasantly surprised at what happened in this film. Last year it was one of the biggest movies of the year, I guess, which is pretty awesome because it means millions and millions and millions of kids across the world were exposed to some very profound and very powerful teachings right there. And thank you, Disney. It's awesome what Disney did in that film. And over the years, you've heard me many times talk about the world myth and how, who's ever seen a play, watched a movie, read a book, seen a TV show that didn't involve the world myth. And the world myth is there's a good guy and there's a bad guy, and the good guy kills the bad guy and becomes the hero. I mean, that's basically, just about every movie we've ever seen. Every TV show, every book, the fairy tale, everything that the good guy feels justified because of their own disturbance and upset and rage in killing someone else. And this is the first television production I've ever seen, talking now about, movies, entertainment movies made for a mass audience. Certainly there are individual films where, they, based on a true story. In fact, we were told there's another one out just recently that would be a good one to go and see, although we haven't looked at that yet, called Father Lou. It's supposed to be a true story. But what impressed me in watching this Spider-Man No Way Home is, and we've sort of been talking in the last week or two about multiple personalities. And in this particular film, over the years of this franchise for Spider-Man, 3 young men have played the Spider-Man character. Well, in this particular film, they bring all 3 of those actors into the movie. And each one of them has had their traumatic loss and experienced their pain and their rage and felt like they wanted to kill the object of their pain and their rage, including the current, this particular, Spider-Man No Way Home. And so through, the juxtaposition of these 3 different characters, kind of like multiple personalities, each with their own rage and, extreme, really, in each case, identifiable rage where a loved one was lost through the fault of another person. And it really brings that all to a head, but it brings it to a head with a whole different message. In fact, it's the same message that 2,000 years ago nullified the world myth and brought forward something new to the world. You remember that 2,000 years ago, this man, Yeshua, goes to the Garden of Gethsemane, and we're told that there he sweat blood. And my offering would be that sweating blood, in terms of the healing process from a physician point of view, sweating blood in that case would look like the healing process, the detox of many generations of pain and trauma. So we hear Yeshua in the Garden of Gethsemane going through that as he processes through and detoxes himself. And he comes out of the garden, and the setup is there for the good guy, kills the bad guy, and becomes the hero. In fact, Peter, in this case, is the setup. He's the guy who's going to kill the high priest servant. That's, he's so enraged at because the high priest servant is coming after and is going to kill his master, his teacher. And it's interesting in that setup, and if you've heard me talk about this before, it's interesting that Yeshua addresses Peter, who's going to, quote unquote, save him from his fate of being mercilessly slaughtered by the high priest servant. Yeshua talks about Peter as Satan. He addresses him. He actually calls Peter Satan, which is like, if you don't understand the Aramaic context of that whole situation, it doesn't make any sense. Peter's supposed to be like the highest level guy of the disciples. Why would he call him Satan? And if you look closely and read those passages, you hear Yeshua define exactly what he means by Satan when he says to Peter, "Get thee behind me, Satan." He says, "For you think in the mind of man rather than the plan of the Creator." What is Satan in Aramaic? In Aramaic, Satan is the resistor one who misleads. That's the definition of Satan. It's not some dude with a red suit, a tail, and a pitchfork. And so Yeshua has come to demonstrate the power that we as human beings have and not fall into a permanent death over the actions of another person. And Peter, before they even head to the Garden of Gethsemane, Peter says, how many swords should we bring to Yeshua? And Yeshua, I guess, knowing what message he was going to give, what lesson he was going to teach, says, oh, just bring one. Peter, standing at the gate of Gethsemane, the high priest servant comes, and Peter, in his rage, is going to kill this man, as though someone who would kill could possibly be a disciple of this man who says we're designed to function as love. And because he's in that kill state, because he's in resistance to what's going on, Yeshua addresses him particularly as Satan. He says, get behind me. Get out of the way. You're going to block what this is about. You don't have a mind that's big enough to understand what's happening here, Peter. You're stuck in your own little personal self and your own little personal rage, and you're willing to kill somebody over it. And that's not why I came. So Yeshua watches as Peter ignores him, and he goes after the high priest servant with his sword. He actually, we're told in the scriptures, he hacks off the high priest servant's ear. Now, does Yeshua say to the high priest servant, there, now you got what you deserve for, get out of here before we give you more? No, he dresses down Peter. He says, Peter, a message that if we could but hear this, and this is the same message, interestingly enough, that was so powerfully portrayed in this movie about Spider-Man, being given to kids, a message so powerful. He says, Peter, if you live by the sword, you will die by the sword. That's not who you are, Peter. But if you do this, you will destroy yourself by the attack action that you get the original of, and the high priest servant only gets the carbon copy. And then he turns to the high priest servant, the man who's going to have him mercilessly slaughtered. And instead of completing the slaughter job, he reaches out and heals him. I've had people in the past who said, well, wait a minute, Michael. Did you notice that doing that got him dead? And I say, yes, I noticed that doing that got him dead. Did you notice they couldn't keep him that way? My offering is that's the message he came to deliver, is that if I don't buy into the energies of death, they can't kill me. If I stay connected to the active presence of love, and here's the archenemy who is in pain and need of healing. He doesn't know it. He doesn't know that his rage is a drug he's using for his pain, and he's just fulfilling the world's insanity of the good guy kills the bad guy and trying to become the hero. But Yeshua maintains his awareness of himself as the active presence of love, and nobody can take that away from us, even by killing the body, which we're told he did. But while doing that action of applying healing to the high priest servant, yes, it got him dead. They couldn't keep him dead. The message he came to deliver. And it was interesting in this Spider-Man movie. Watch it if you haven't. It's really powerful to watch. By the way, the impetus, it's like the smartest man in the room in the movie wasn't a man, it was a woman. It was his mother who reminded him who he was and what he was here for and what humans do. In fact, the line is repeated in the movie. This is what we do. We be love. We function as love, and that's what we do. And so in this personalities of the Spider-Man character, each one of them just grieving so deeply and raging at the object of attention of their pain, is supported by the other two personalities. In turn, each one of these is supported in healing and reaching out and bringing healing to the archenemy, to the villain. And one by one, through the activity, through the action of love, and it's like, here it is in the Disney good guy healing the bad guy and delivering the message so beautifully, so powerfully, and so clearly. This is what we do. No, we don't kill. We recognize another's pain, and we stand as active, present love and bring healing to the world. Wow. Thank you, Disney, for changing the world myth in kids' entertainment movies. I mean, how many million kids for this first time were introduced to, instead of rah, 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 let's go get a gun, let's go shoot somebody, which, you know, that one's playing out in the world in spades, obviously. Instead of delivering the movie of be the hero by killing, it was be the hero by having the internal fortitude to heal yourself and offering presence and the power of active love. So deeply powerful, so deeply profound. Now, millions of kids across the globe have got the brain cells for something different. I understand, you know, on another note, maybe the reason why, you know, some of the people who are playing the rage game in the world are going after Disney and trying to cut out their tax benefits and blah, 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 interfere with their business model. Because Disney is delivering a different movie. Of course, they're using an excuse different than that, but they're delivering a different message through their entertainment media than the one that supports the good guy kills the bad guy and therefore is the hero. Very, very clear message. The good guy functions as love, has compassion, offers support and healing to the bad guy. And the bad guy doesn't know what hit him. When that active present love is there, each one of them in turn, these supervillains, turn around and come out of their stupor, move into a healing space rather than the space. I mean, it was so cool to watch. In fact, as I think about it, I think I'm going to go back. I mean, we ended up renting it, but I think I'm going to go back and rent it again just to watch the nuances of how beautifully they presented this message. And how many kids, you know, I guess kids are starting to watch this Marvel comic stuff at 4 and 5 and 6 and 10 and 12 and 20. I have hope. There's a new message in mass media that's coming forward into the world. Put that on top of a movie that came out a couple of years ago, if you haven't seen it, Inside Out. I think that Inside Out may well be one of the most powerful, and I said this when the movie came out and recommended everybody see it. If you haven't seen the movie Inside Out, it's another Disney thing. And it may well be the most important event in history. And the reason for that, the reason I say that, is that in a mass media model that's going to be spread across the world in so many languages and be available for so many future generations, it demonstrates exactly how the human mind works, exactly how people get lost in trauma and pain, and demonstrates the healing process so powerfully. It demonstrates the power of being in pain and being able to, instead of have to cover it up and pretend everything is cool, being able to share that pain with another, being able to tell the truth, being vulnerable to the presence of love, and inviting the presence of love from others in our world. In this particular case, it's a cartoon character who's in great pain, inviting the presence of love with her parents instead of covering up with all the lies, doing the things that she thinks her parents want her to do. telling the truth about her pain and bringing a space of healing. I mean, it's a very profound message, and why I think it perhaps is maybe one of the most important events in history, and now it's joined by Spider-Man, is in God only knows how many languages all across the world. Kids as young as 4 with that movie are going to start to build the brain cells for. There's a different way of doing it than the way this insane world has taught us. So if you feel inclined to be exposed to something profound and powerful, watch Inside Out. It's a Pixar movie, or Marvel comic movie, Spider-Man No Way Home. Time for healing, time for the message of actual healing to get out into the world, and for people to process. And remember, in this work, we define processing as the ability to hold love conscious, active, and present when something less than love comes up. And so we see each of these characters in this film with profound and what the world would call fully justified pain and rage toward the object of that situation that has brought that rage up, and turning it around into healing. So amazing. Certainly an idea whose time has come. And we're delighted that the time has come for you to be with us today. And we're at about the 30-minute mark, so we've got 30 minutes for conversation. Let's see if that stimulates any conversation, anything that anybody might want to share. And or is there something we can support you with any of the tools? Our call-in number, if you're on one of those stations where we can't see you, is 563-999-3581. If you call that number, you'll be listening directly to the show on your phone. And then if you push 1, that raises a hand in the control panel. Thank you, Blog Talk, for this technology that we can do this. And that when you push 1, Jean will see that you want to talk to us. She'll introduce you by your area code, and we'll have a conversation. So, Miss Jeannie, do we have anybody out there in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
No, it is all quiet.
Well, I can only imagine that conversation would leave some question in somebody's mind. And so if you're out there in listener land, push 1 and let's have a conversation about it. What's on your mind? How can we support you? Anything going on in your world? Anything that you need or would like to have the support in understanding the tools, utilizing the tools, whether it be the forgiveness process or any of the other dozens of tools that we share? If so, push 1. Let's have a conversation about it. 563-999-3581. If you're on one of those stations that we're broadcast through that doesn't come directly into our control panel, so we can't tell you're there. But if you call that number, push 1. We'll be talking. So let's talk about it.
We have a hand up.
Sweet. Let's go for it.
Okay. I think that it is Patrick McGann. Area code 727. You're on the air.
Okay. Am I muted or can you hear me?
You're loud and clear, Patrick. Welcome. Good to hear your voice. Haven't heard from you in a while on the show.
Okay. I have about a small dissertation on my thoughts. And first, I'll start off with, I hated war, and I hated killing, and I hated all that stuff, and I went in to save people. But then I found when I did the beamer, which activated the energy to move and the blood to move through my legs, which weren't working anymore for lack of blood flow and neuropathy, then one night all this energy comes up from my legs, so my voice torques it around, and I realized, oh my gosh, what I blocked there was I hate war, And I don't like really being here on earth because of that, because of people from high school beating up other kids and people picking on people and all that stuff. I just hated it. I said, well, okay.
Right.
So now I understand that judgment, judge not least to be judged, is not good. So I thought maybe I'm supposed to look at this from a higher perspective, from maybe, soul perspective of growth of people over lifetimes. And I said, well, I was probably, pretty heavy-duty guy in some lives and was a warrior, but I quit and switched, and Patrick switched, and many people I know who were warriors and even killers, thought they were really good at it, switched over and became healers. We've had enough of that crap, right? So then, so I looked at it from more of that level, more often to, balance myself out on my viewpoints of judging it all. But I still, when I went in the Latter-day Saints church, and I was, just loving love, my favorite thing. I love love and I hate. Well, the hate didn't work out too well for me. So also just popped into my head coming from off to the side, and I'll go back on track, I believe, is Allah. And Allah, when I was in a meditation group that was chanting Allah, they were Sufis, and everybody holds hands and just be in love with Allah. And at the end of it, and all kinds of wonderful things happen. People clear, people cry, people go to joy, it's really nice. And so I asked the leader at the end, I said, what does Allah mean? He said, all there is. So along the way, I thought, well, I'm supposed to love all there is. I'm not, be in neutral type love. Don't judge it. It's all development of souls. We're all made in the image of God. We're all creators. We're all learning how to be creators. And the majority on earth are learning the hard way through pain, suffering, death, and destruction. Then in their thing, it was a thing that really bothered me, and going back to Latter-day Saints teachings and church, interpretations, they had one guy who was assigned by an angel to kill a leader of the bad guys. And I thought, what, you got to be kidding me? So I addressed this with the brothers, and they said, well, like that was his mission. That's what he was supposed to do, and that would save a lot of people. And also, how do you all feel about war? Because you're willing to go. I'm like, other religions you're willing to do. And they said, well, if there hadn't been, war in this country hadn't come about through war, we wouldn't have a place to be, freedom of religion and Latter-day Saints and all the other people that are free to have a free country. I'm like, I don't really like this, but I hold some truth from a higher perspective, not mine. Then I go, okay, now it comes Ukraine and Russia. So then my own personality's perspective on that, without going higher, is this is, for me and my wife both, a war between light and dark. Why? Because all autocratic countries, all countries like Russia, North Korea, etc., communism is fine for me. It means working together, but dictatorships and autocratic leadership where they program all the people, and I know we're programmed, but they're programmed like the North Koreans. They believed when they came south to our lines that they were going to rescue all these, their people from us raping and pillaging. That's how they were programmed. And it wasn't true. One guy had a 36 who went to kill the president down south. His grenade, he was going to commit suicide. They all do that. And they did that, every one of them, by blowing up their own heads. Because they were so programmed, even though they saw the beauty of soul and that nothing that they were programmed was true at all. There was everybody was happy. So why are we down here? Why are we doing this? Nobody could question it. Everybody went ahead and tried it and then destroyed themselves, except for one guy's lousy grenade didn't go off, and he became a South Korean and told the story of that, and how he was programmed and how beautiful it was, but he just had to go ahead with it. Then we ourselves, by our country, were programmed in high school to be anti-communist, and we go fight and kill commies over in Vietnam. and quite a few people I knew, that's what they believed they were there to do, was go kill some communists. So I see all this programming, even by so-called free country like ours, who behind the scenes is doing terrible things. And I see two things in this war, Russia and Ukraine. I see that the whole, basically over 22 countries in the free world of supposed free will and choice, which I consider the light and say the angels of darkness. I think that dictatorships, even in our country, whatever it is, but it's paramount in countries that are dictatorships, that everybody who's trying to control others is one of the fallen angel type energies that they're being guided by and that they're in. And those who choose free will and believe in freedom are on the side of, what I call the light. That's the perspective I'm still holding. And then I got to thinking, I believe everything you say. At the same time, it's like I have a dual mind about it. I'm going, okay, we're watching this war. We go back and forth on it, watch what happens, and watch to me, it's like Russia, what they were doing there. They're starving countries all over the world because of their blockades and because of their theft, and they were planning on blocking the whole southern area, shrinking Ukraine, and blocking the Black Sea, so they had no import-export. They're the second or first major exporter of grain to all the poor countries in the world. So there's going to be a lot of starvation because of Russia and their control. All of their people that weren't programmed, the majority of their soldiers were programmed to begin with, but not enough. Now they know, hey, we're being lied to. Now the ones that were trained a long time still fight. They're supposed to, like North Korean guys coming through. But then it's like, so for me it's a war between light and dark, and I'm seeing now from my perspective at this point that what the Latter-day Saints were saying might have some truth, and that millions are going to die. I would know that, people are controlled in Russia and North Korea and et cetera, other countries. They don't even allow, some countries are dictatorships. One of them, they allowed computers in because it means freedom. People begin to think, open up and see the world, and want that freedom. But without this being a win, without stopping Russia and all the suffering and all the hell that's happening and all the long-term suffering that all the Russian people, not a great people. And I found that same with Japanese. They were programmed, we were programmed, they were supposed to fight for their God and take over and all these same things that happen. It's just total insanity, and we know that. But it's like, through the war, we stopped Germany and we stopped Japan from controlling the world and subjugating people under dominance, which I really think is, like if Earth is we let it grow, if it's let to grow, then we're all screwed. We're all going under dominance, which may happen within our own countries anyway, like CIA, et cetera. So anyway, those are all my thoughts on that. So I'm listening to what you think about all that.
Yeah, my take, one of the things that has to happen, there's an interesting statement that was made by Vladimir Lenin. He says that if you want to destroy a culture, all you need to do is change the meaning of its words. And you brought up a word that this whole mindset of war is based on, in the word warrior. And it was about maybe 2 hours before the show that I just happened to come across a definition from a Native American that we're all familiar with, a man named Sitting Bull. Sitting Bull, interestingly enough, was a Lakota Sioux. The Lakota Sioux language is Aramaic. There are many words in the Lakota Sioux language here in America that are identical to the Aramaic language of Yeshua from 2,000 years ago. But I just happened to come across a statement made by Sitting Bull
Aramaic in mindset, and he defines the word warrior for us. We think of warrior as, out there with the guns and kill and all of that. But the Native American Lakota Sioux, which to me would fit in with the Aramaic, he says the warrior for us is one who sacrifices himself for the good of others. His task is to take care of the elderly, the defenseless, those who cannot provide for themselves. Above all, the children, the future of humanity. They're the words of Sitting Bull about warrior.
Yay.
And I think that when one is cast in that role, but the persona, and it fits. I don't know if you've seen this. Patrick, you will love this movie if you haven't seen it. Spider-Man No Way Home was like one of the biggest hits in the movie world last year in 2021. Watch it on Amazon. I think it costs us $5 to rent it or whatever. I don't know where else you might be able to see it, but you'll love watching the resolution of, you watch this kid, this Spider-Man kid who, his father was killed by one of the arch villains, and he just goes nuts in rage and wants to kill. And, his alternate personalities carrying the message of that is not who we are, we do it differently, provides resolution. And it's time for us to, I think, come forward as individuals and collectively to provide resolution for those who would carry out the ill intentions that you're talking about, that in our Western degraded definition of warrior means we're going to go kill somebody, that it's time for us to get back to the truth of what it really is about. It's about being a caretaker. It's about being one who cares, who brings love present and brings healing. And, it's one of the reasons for me being dedicated to this forgiveness technology is that it's the single piece of information that is missing globally. To me, it's the single piece of information that is missing globally that leaves us with no way to see through to resolution. Handed this tool, people can start to see through to the resolution of such deep pain. In this film, this Disney film on Spider-Man No Way Home, they show this kid, you'll remember that Spider-Man is a kid who's bitten by a spider and he becomes a superhero, the whole comic book thing. But, coming right down to, his father, or maybe it was his grandfather, is killed. And, they just show this kid just raging in murderous rage, wanting to kill, and the resolution and the healing, and reminded that this rage, this murderous thing is not who we are. It's not what we do. And there is resolution outside of that, but in the world of rage, there is no other resolution possible. And this, to me, this piece called forgiveness is the single missing piece, and I spelled that P-E-A-C-E, of the puzzle that literally brings the ultimate pain that so many people are carrying, and through a mind filled with that kind of pain can't imagine anything other than, the rageful killing and justifying it by, but we're going to save millions. Well, what if we brought healing to those who are, quote unquote, in the realm of the bad guy? What if we brought that presence of love, which is what this film demonstrates so powerfully, and we're able to move through to the other side of the greed, of the pain, of the trauma? And when we can get enough people, for me, the reason I'm dedicated to this is when we can get enough people to understand that principle, then we can transform the whole game, the whole insanity, and get back to the truth of who we are here on planet Earth and start to function out of who we are.
I have, you can hear me still, right?
Oh, yeah, you're loud and clear, Patrick.
Hello?
Sure.
Okay. So there were two more things. One is Patricia's overview point of evolution of all of us, and my viewpoint of us here in America, and your forefront, Jesus or Yeshua's forefront, and your forefront at the front of the wedge to bring peace and healing. So one of the things these are good things I found from the war over there in Ukraine. A lot of people were and are being raped and pillaged and killed for no reason, and a lot of trauma going on. But during Vietnam, what stopped the war was basically reporting, pictures, films. Now it's at a higher level than ever. So because of the internet, because the information gets out there, now the United States, as you know, did the same thing. We did all the trauma. We're still doing it down in Gitmo. Torture every country, kill all the people, destroy the water, let the children die because there's no water, blah, blah, blah. And we look like the good guy, but we've never been any more than the Russians, in truth. But now, because of this reporting and because they're being charged with the war crimes, then that's going to stop us. And it's going to stop other countries. And it's all because of this information availability. So I can see the good coming from that. And I see that here in the United States, where people have been, like one of the people I'm thinking of right now, another trauma from childhood extreme, and now repeating those problems over and over now in her life, that we can help those people directly in the here and now. I don't think there's any way we could have got to Putin or any of his bad guys in that whole system. Additionally, my wife and I watched a CIA type that was, I forgot what it's called, but anyway, they understand. He explained that the Russian people, for so many generations, were under a czar, that their race consciousness still wanted one person in charge. They didn't want a democratic society, and all the old people, 50 and up, don't want a democratic society. They just want one guy
to be told what to do
and live. Yeah, they actually want it. But because of the internet, the younger generation is wanting more freedom. They're still, a lot of them are being careful on interviews, of course, because they can go to jail for 15 years. They say it's a war. But I can see that it's changing, but it's changing fairly quickly compared to any other time in our history. But also, the way Bishop put it is, it's like we're all one unit. We're all one. And the real change is the evolution of all of us. Sometimes, lifetime after lifetime, kind of slowly when you look at that perspective. But I do see, even when I go to churches, no matter what they are, 30, 40 years ago, the majority of any church I went to, there were only a few that were in the light for real. And the majority were what I call hypocrites. Friends of mine I saw from high school, they say and mimic and try to look right and act, try to hide behind a tie and a suit, but go out and do evil in their business all week long and then come back to church trying to, get led in the right path, but it wasn't in them. But now I see the light seems to be coming through more and more and more and more and more are waking up everywhere I look. Maybe that's, resonance for me, but I really feel that it's happening. But I feel like a place like, even though like the South Koreans are trying to help out the North Koreans all the time because it's a dictatorship for generations, they and Russia are going to have to go through long-term suffering. Get a lot of bankrupt Russia. It's going to be a real mess for a long time after this is over. Right, it is already.
And I'd hold a space for something different than that.
Yeah, I'd like that.
There's definitely a lot of trauma to be cleaned up in the world, and each person, to me, if I thought that we had to get the technology of forgiveness to every pained, traumatized, insane, murderous mind, I'd have given this up a long time ago. But there was this physicist 2,000 years ago who said, a little leavening leavens the whole loaf. And that's a principle of critical mass in physics, that we don't have to get to every mind. We just have to get enough minds through the gate that collectively we can produce an energy that brings that transformation, and that transformation, when the active presence of love is powerful enough, can happen in an instant and change the most ancient traumas and pains literally in an instant. We did, in our Hear My Voice book study out of England, our last session that we did with the group, the woman who runs the group actually shared a worksheet that she'd done that morning, and it was kind of an offhanded worksheet she shared. She said it wasn't, some big issue in her life or anything, but she was committed to doing worksheets, and so she had done a worksheet the morning of the book study, and the book study is 3:30 in the afternoon here on the second and fourth Thursdays of the month at 3:30 in the afternoon Eastern time, which means it's 8:30 at night there. And this young woman was still in tears from the worksheet she'd done that morning, because it was an offhanded worksheet, nothing of any big consequence, but the insight that she had when she canceled the goal and allowed her mind to be freed of the momentary trauma that was going on was such a profoundly powerful insight for her that very early in her life, and she realized that she'd been living with this under everything her whole life with no awareness of it whatsoever, was that she didn't deserve to be here. As a young child, she acquired the thought, and it was probably a power person message. We didn't get into that specifically, but she had been laboring her whole life. This woman in her early 40s labored her whole life with an unconscious thought of, I don't deserve to be here. And the pain and the trauma of that keeps coming back around, the why is this happening to me again experience. And it's so powerful to hear her still, on the verge of tears, processing that. And when we can get enough people who will step in and process those kinds of energies personally within themselves, then we're opening a field on the planet for all traumas that people carry to be processed in an instant. And so that's the space I hold for the shift that's coming, because we're seeing so many signs. To me, the fact that we watched this film, and here's in this major, like the biggest movie of the year for Disney, this major healing process. To me, that's like, hey, we're on the cusp of critical mass, and we're right on the edge of moving it forward. That's my vote. And being able to embrace literally the trauma of the generations. I had a...
well, I'm this way. I don't know how long it'll take, and I don't know when it'll pop. But I do know this: we can work, do the leavening. So I'm looking forward to reintroducing your work to the church on Sunday or Saturday, excuse me.
Cool. Sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome. I don't know if I shared this with you, Patrick. I don't think we had a conversation about it. But back several months ago, I was doing a still point session. Jeannie had gone off to see her dad at the care facility, and I was here, and I was doing a still point session. And in breathing, I had experienced an opening, and in that opening, my eyes are closed when I'm doing still point, and I literally am guided to look down, even though I'm just laying there breathing. I'm guided to look down, and as I move my eyes down inside of me, my eyes aren't open, but inside of me, it opens, and I see this unfathomably large field of darkness. And in the darkness were an uncountable number of lights. And what I was told was happening in that space was that I was looking at my generational patterns, my generational traumas, and the uncountable number of people in my genes who, while they were these sparks of light, were lost in darkness, that this darkness was just, the expanse of it was just beyond my imagination. And in that space, there was a request from those people who were in my history, in my genes, to support them in processing the pain that they were carrying, that was still being held by them, even though they weren't in bodies. And I, very willingly said, yes, of course, I'll be happy to be the conduit to process this pain out of your experiences. And it was interesting because literally, and we're down to the last minute or so, but literally, I verbally, in my still point session, I verbally spoke to my ancestors about, yes, I'm willing to be the conduit to process that pain. And at the moment when I said that, my phone rang. And Michael J., my son, was on the phone. And we've never had any conversation about ancestral stuff or any of that. And literally the second that I said to my ancestors, yes, I will help to process that pain, my phone rings and there's Michael J. And he's, Dad, I'm on Ancestry.com and I'm looking up some ancestry stuff and I need some information about some of our ancestors. A conversation we've never had. And to this second when I say that, there he is. It was just like, to me it was a symbol. And then Jeannie came back. And when she arrived at home after seeing her dad, she was in tears. And it's like, geez, honey, what's happening? And the energy for her, the healing that was happening in her was her father, and I'm just going to let the clock run out. Her father had spoken words to her that it's been a long time in his trauma that he said, and he spoke to her when, normally she'll say, bye, Dad, we'll see you later, I love you. And her dad spoke the words, I love you back, and it just touched a place in her heart of deep healing. And she walked in the room, and that opened a whole other level of healing for me with my father and the traumas that we carried. So, it's happening, and the more people who choose to participate, the deeper the healing process is going to be on a global scale. And we hold a space for that. And appreciate you being part of the team and the opportunity to be on your team as well.